Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group. Today we have one of the school board members on, Ms. Pattie Mansur. How you doing, Pattie?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing just fine. Hey, Pattie, give our audience a rundown of since you've been on the board. You came on last time when you were running. Talk
Yes.
about some of the high points of the district, and then or you could do it either way: the low point and the high point.
Okay. Well, so thank you, Carlos, for having me. I think you know, because you've had me on a couple of times before, I actually have been on the school board for 7 years. I first ran in 2014. I'm actually seeking reelection, and so I'll be on the ballot this April, April 6th, and I'm seeking reelection for the at-large seat. I've been in the at-large seat since I first ran in 2014. The other part about my life in the school district is that I was a parent of 3 children. I raised all 3 children in the Kansas City Public Schools. All 3 graduated from this district, and one of my daughters is actually a teacher in the district now. So she teaches in an elementary school in the northeast part of our city. So I've loved it. I mean, I've had a lot of high points. I mean, we've had some rough times as a school district. And Kansas City Public Schools has had some rough times in its history, but honestly, we're on an upward trajectory. I think sometimes people get frustrated, Carlos, because they want you to run like a rabbit, and sometimes you're moving like a turtle. But and I don't want to tell you that you have to move like a turtle, like a tortoise, to make gains. But one of the things that is different about the Kansas City Public Schools now is that, to some degree, because we've had to move a little bit slower, we had to do that in order to make the kind of changes and sustain them. We have a history of superintendents coming and going in 18 months, 2 years. This superintendent today, Dr. Mark Bedell, he is now in his 5th year, and he has a contract that will take him to 2022. I'm hoping and planning that he's going to stay beyond that. I'll say this last thing and I'll pause. Him being here for 6 years, that's a record breaker. There has not been a superintendent who has come to Kansas City Public Schools and stayed this long for over 35 years. That's
Well,
a high point.
well, what I will say about Bedell, because I didn't even know his damn kids went to public school and was excelling in sports, because Cascade Sports. And
Yeah.
when I started interviewing athletes, his daughter was on that volleyball team at Lincoln. And every time when I tell the kids to say their name and they say Bedell, I'm like, who's your daddy? And and then they would tell me, and she went to a HBCU, because when she graduated last year, we had her and 2 other Lincoln players that were going to HBCUs talking about how they wanted to go to HBCUs. I give Bedell high marks on bringing Kansas City sports programs, shedding a little more light on them. On a 1 to 10, I give him basically an 8. And I think people in the sports community overall, especially basketball community, really know him because he gets out with the people. He gets out playing one-on-one in the street. I don't know how he be doing that, but he's out there, right there on Prospect or wherever the community is. I give him that, but I give him bad marks on some other things on the but then when he came on the show a couple of times, he always really leaves his management to staff. So I can't get on him like I want to, because he's already said, I don't interfere. I'm not a micromanager. And so I give him a pass, but I give Dr. Bedell an 8. He's had 2 kids in this district go to public schools, excel. That
3.
sends them
He's
3.
got 3. Yep.
There's another one
So,
coming up.
well, yeah. So I think I just want to say this one more time for your viewers, because I think it's really important for people to think about. When you think about the fact that this is a school district that for over 3 decades, nearly 4 decades, has not been able to keep a superintendent past 5 years, that's extraordinary. You won't find that story in any of our neighboring districts. Here's the other thing. He and his wife came to Kansas City. They settled in this city. They didn't choose to live outside of the city, but just come in for the day to work. They put their 3 children in school. You're right. He has graduated one last year. He's going to graduate another child this year. And then he has still a 3rd child in the wings to come up.
I haven't met them, but his
Yeah.
son, he definitely has a skill set on that basketball court. I'll tell you that.
Yes.
And both of them are scholarly. I think Bedell and his wife would have to be proud of them.
Yeah.
So what other issues would you like to discuss, Pattie?
Well, I want to tell you a couple things about, because Kansas City Public Schools was actually on the front page of the Star this last Friday. And that's because we are actively seeking accreditation. The way accreditation works in Missouri is we have to meet certain benchmarks in our performance across 5 different areas: academic improvement, how do the racial and ethnic subgroups perform, what are our graduation rates like, how are we doing on college and career readiness. So we have these benchmarks that we have to meet, but then we are dependent upon the state and State Board of Education actually awarding us accreditation. Kansas City Public Schools, like a traditional public school district, gets a accreditation designation. Charter schools do not get that designation. So charter schools get assessed by those measures, but they don't get the designation or the label. And we think it's high time that we lose this label that we have today, which is provisional, and that we get the full accreditation. We believe we've earned it. We've been making the case. We've been working with the state.
Who do you make the case to? Excuse me for cutting you off. I'm the cutoff king.
Yeah. No, it's okay. We make the case to Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And so that's, to me, when getting that designation of accreditation will be a demonstration to the community that we are living up to our promise to Kansas City families. And Carlos, you've talked to me before. I really believe in this deeply. I put my kids in this district. I didn't want to sit in the stands. You love sports. I didn't want to sit in the stands, and I didn't want to referee from the sidelines. I wanted to be part of creating something better. And I believe that we're doing that. So that's a high point to me.
Well, give me, the cutoff king is interrupting again.
That's okay.
What was your take on Lincoln Prep? I'm saying that it seems to be the jewel in the crown for real, on their sports program, their academic program. Talk about some of the real positive things that that school has achieved over the last half a decade.
Well, I mean, you've spent a lot of time over at Lincoln Prep, so you know that it's a high performing school. You know that we've grown the number of students who get the International Baccalaureate diploma. We have a lot of
tell our audience a little bit about that.
About the International Baccalaureate.
Right.
So that's a global international program. It's very, very rigorous. Students who take those classes, they do tests and essays and other kinds of have to do performance pieces and other kinds of assessments that actually get graded and scored by people in other parts of the country or even other parts of the globe. So it's not a program that is evaluated by DESE per se. It's actually evaluated by educators nationally and internationally. But I think the other thing I want to talk about is that one of the things that's happened in the last 5 years is it used to be that advanced placement courses were only available at Lincoln. Advanced placement courses are now, multiple courses are available in every one of our high schools. There was a lot of inequity, and we have had to really double down and attack that in the last 5 years. I mean, families at Central High School would say, why aren't we getting the same kind of resources, supports, programming that we're seeing at some of these other signature schools?
Can
So
I cut you off again for
yeah,
a minute?
cut me off. Go ahead.
Two things. When you said that, the first thing, because one of the things I'm on right now, I think that the corporate community has not paid their fair share to the district in which they're operating in, per se. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of the problems that are inherent in the urban core across the board, especially with the school systems, is financial.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
Kansas City cannot hope to bring the type of young, talented people from around the nation here unless it fixes its school system, because uh, you're moving back to the urban core, which is super expensive right now for young. I don't know what generation, they got all these X's and all of that, but the ones that are coming out of college with good degrees and are trying to start a family, they cannot choose between living in the suburbs where their kids can go to school and they don't have to pay and get a good education, where they would love to be in the metropolitan urban core and feel that the school systems are giving that same type of education. And that's
Mhm.
what you're up against. But Cascade Media Group, uh, we're going to, for 221, try to focus on the corporate community and the downtown council to get with our district. If they haven't, we're going to be agitating, because you can't have the city that everyone talks about without no do re mi.
Well, I mean, Kansas City, Kansas City business community is really stepping up at a higher level than we saw 10 years ago. So where they're stepping up. So like, think about it. 6 years ago, we didn't have sports stadiums at every single high school, right? We had Bryant Field over behind Southeast, and then we had some other fields that were in disrepair. Over the past 6 years, we've got high school stadiums now at every single high school, other than Paseo High School, which is our performing arts school. But that's really important because we want families who live in those neighborhoods around those schools to have a place to come to on Fridays and Saturdays. We want them to come to the track meets. We want them to stop by the soccer games. That's been a huge investment, and we couldn't have done it without business support and without foundation support, without the support of organizations like LISC.
I'm
But
glad to hear that,
one thing
because when I talked to Crosby Kemper 4 years ago or 3 years ago before he left, I said the civic, and he said that they were coming out of their shell. So now this is some validation. He said that they were beginning to step up, and you're validating that.
Well, and Carlos, you've talked to me offline a little bit about tax incentives and the negative effect of tax incentives. So this is an area where we need the business and corporate community's support. We need their support to get fair policies around the use of tax incentives, because Kansas City Public Schools is ranked 17th among 5,600 school districts around the country in the level of abated property tax revenue. So that's not something I'm making up. That's from national reports. There's been a lot of discussion. We've got incredible leadership among a lot of our city council people. Some of them you've had on your show many times. They're trying to come up with good, sound policy. We're gonna have to roll our sleeves up and do this together. We need local elected leaders to help, because I want to come back to your first point. If we're going to have a thriving city long-term that doesn't empty out in the donut center, we've got to have more reasonable tax policy around how we're going to apply incentives, when and for how long. And I think that's a critical issue.
All right. I think I told you while I was getting ready to do this interview, Dan Flowers and another councilwoman called me. I'm going to bring that up in my discussions with them. Is there any other thing that you would like our community to know? And so since you are at large, that means our community helped thrust you into the office.
You did.
And are you seeking for our community? And when I say our community, you represent the whole community, but for my purpose, What's Up Kansas City, we represent the bottom 3/4 of the Black community. Are you making your pitch to them on how important it is for them to help get you back in that seat because who you're fighting for?
I want everybody in the city to come out and support me on April 6th. And here's why that matters to me. I always had the option to run in a sub-district down in the Southwest corridor where I live. But my children went to school with kids from all over this city. And I got to know families, and I got to work with them, and I got to volunteer with them. We did tailgates at football games. We did field days at elementary schools. We, took kids roller skating. I got to know families from all over. So in 2014, when I first ran, I wanted to run citywide because I feel like I share Kansas City families' desire for a vibrant school district. And I believe that it's important that I continue to fight for equity for everyone. I mean, the tide will rise all boats. I don't feel like if one group gets something, that some other group that I might be a part of won't. I don't feel that way. That's not been my experience. I've met incredible leaders throughout this city. I mean, Kansas City has amazing school leaders, activists. We are all, I hope, in this together, because I'm fighting for this district. I believe in independent governance, transparency, accountability to people like you and anyone else in this city. So yes, I do want your viewers to vote for me.
All right. In closing, as I always close in, I'm segueing to what you said. People don't listen to the words sometime. You was talking about the equity and the level rising. When you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
Program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.